Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, Mr. Henry Puna, Deputy Director General of the World Trade Organization, Deputy EU Delegation, His Excellency Dr. Asia Ascola, Your Excellency Ambassador Mary Falemaka, distinguished delegates and officials from MSG sub-region, and our friends joining us from other PACP countries, invited guests, speakers, and moderators, representatives and participants from the private sector, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Let me, on behalf of the MSG Secretariat, offer a very warm welcome to you all to this first Melanesian Joint Symposium on Trade and Gender held in Port Vila, Vanuatu. I wish to thank you all for finding time to join us for this symposium. I am sorry that I am not able to be with you in person today, and thus this message delivered through this medium. This event is organized for the Melanesian sub-region by the MSG Secretariat with the support of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, European Union Tech Buff Program. During my tenure as head of the MSG Secretariat, I will be actively pursuing more joint undertakings of a similar nature with the PIF and the EU in our efforts to better serve our membership. In this regard, let me convey my sincere gratitude to the Secretary General, Henry Puna of PIF, and Her Excellency, Dr. Asia Ascola of the EU, for ensuring that this important symposium on trade and gender event is possible. I am reminded that this is the first time that we are organizing a trade and gender symposium in Melanesia. I do hope that this won't be the last, but the first of many more to come. It is pleasing to note that in keeping with the true Pacific spirit of family, goodwill, and inclusiveness, invitations have been extended to our brothers and sisters in Polynesia and Micronesia and across our blue Pacific continent to join us for what is going to be a constructive dialogue, a talanoa or storian on this important topic on trade and gender. I am hopeful that the discussions in the next 2 days will bring together useful information and provide opportunity for sharing of experiences and knowledge in good practices, not only in the trade and gender space in Melanesia, but indeed the wider Pacific region. And also, it would provide an opportunity on how best to leverage the advances in the IT area to participate meaningfully in trade and commerce. The MSG and the wider Pacific region face daunting development challenges, occasioned largely by our smallness. Smallness in relation to the size of our economies and the size of our markets. Compounding this is the vast distance to markets, diseconomies of scale, high trade costs, supply-side capacities, as well as the other trade infrastructure impediments that constrain us from taking optimum advantage of regional and global value chains. It is critical that MSG economies, and indeed other Pacific Island countries, take maximum advantage of major sectors and develop appropriate sectors that could spur economic activities through support for women entrepreneurship. Let me emphasize, women entrepreneurship. At the risk of digressing from the main issues of the symposium, let me just draw your attention at this juncture to this analogy. Let us think of our respective economies and countries like a bird. We all want our economies and countries to be on an upward trajectory, like a bird in full flight. But a bird cannot fly if it has only one wing or its other wing is clipped. Likewise, I put it to you, our economies and countries cannot prosper if the other half of our population, the womenfolk, is not there with us in the enterprise of economic growth and nation building. Trade is recognized as an important foundation and enabler for economic growth and poverty reduction. Trade and improvement in the overall welfare of our peoples. Trade agreements are useful tools, and they have been used to lower trade barriers, incentivize private sector opportunities towards enhancing international trade. For the MSG, the current MSG trade agreement governs trade in goods only. To further enhance our economic and trade cooperation amongst our members, the services sector has been included in the new Melanesian Free Trade Agreement. This affirms and manifests in a concrete way our members' commitment to and aspirations towards the MSG sub-region attempts at greater economic integration agenda. We at the MSG Secretariat recognize that women entrepreneurs tend towards economic empowerment and development. MSG Secretariat efforts in this regard are informed by the plethora of literature by authorities on this subject. They all counsel that it cannot be done effectively without the participation of our womenfolk. For instance, according to the ADB's 2019 report on leveraging trade for women's economic empowerment in the Pacific, around 80% of economic activities in the Pacific are categorized in the informal sector. And interestingly enough, approximately 86% of micro, small, and medium enterprises in the region are female-owned. The statistics also show that there is still a huge potential to bridge the gap between men and women in economic activities and in labor markets in Melanesia and across the Pacific. We need to challenge ourselves to further bridge this gap. The ADB's 2019 report also illustrated a significant increase in aid for trade projects that embrace gender equality and women's empowerment in the Pacific. Correspondingly, there has been a rise in development partner contributions to support in-country aid for trade projects, which has, over the years, been directed towards gender inclusiveness in trade policies. Again, we would do well in the Pacific to embrace these positive trends and challenge our countries to take advantage of the changes in the donor community behavior and approach. In the MSG sub-region, our member states are already open for business post-COVID-19. And I note the same is happening for the other countries in the Pacific region. The experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic have been debilitating in all our economies. It has caused unprecedented damage to our communities, resulting in the closure of many micro, small, and medium enterprises. It has also precipitated major disruptions to supply chains of products and services. Massive redundancy exercises were undertaken, causing unemployment to rise in the formal sectors. The livelihoods of our communities were adversely affected in many, many ways, and our economies posted negative growth, resulting in huge losses in the gross domestic product of our island economies. Despite these challenges, the pandemic has also provided the opportunity for the small and medium enterprises to embrace and increasingly use the ICT platforms to leverage marketing of products and services, as well as sourcing of products and services. The increasing use of electronic commerce is inevitable. But while offering many conveniences in business transactions, the IT platform is still fraught with many dangers that our entrepreneurs must be made aware of and assisted to navigate through. Internet fraud and cybercrime abound. There lies our other challenge. Developing and providing a credible, safe space and environment for our entrepreneurs. How do we address this? I leave this question to all of you. There has been increasing debate and dialogue taking place on trade and gender at the international front. Manifestations of this conversation is reflected in the increase in aid for trade projects that I alluded to earlier. And many of these aid for trade projects demand more enhanced and gender inclusiveness in trade activities. The MSG Secretariat is aware of these developments, and to this end, initiated this dialogue to deepen understanding and knowledge on the role and relationship between trade and gender, with a view to coming up with affirmative actions that can be taken to mainstream gender considerations in our trade development strategies and actions. While we acknowledge that gender is not limited to women alone, however, want to encourage all of us to recognize the significant role that women play in economic empowerment in Melanesia. We urge that more concerted attention is given to our womenfolk. With your understanding, let me make another observation here of the importance of the role of women. In our communities, the women are very important in food security. The women are very important in the notion of a savings culture. They're the ones who put food on the table for the family. They're the ones who know how much they can cook for today and how much to leave for tomorrow. They're the ones who know what to cook for consumption for today and what to leave as seeds to be sown for tomorrow. So the Melanesian culture, the Pacific culture, it is not alien to have women play an important role in community development, in ensuring that the family is well taken care of. Therefore, convening a stock-taking dialogue and analyzing the relevant issues pertaining to trade and gender within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and electronic commerce is crucially important. I am pleased to note that this two-day event will bring together speakers from the national, the Pacific, and international levels who will provide more insights, more ideas, and more lessons to deepen our understanding and knowledge of how trade impacts gender, gender impacts trade, and highlight strategies to improve women empowerment and their greater involvement in trade in the MSG sub-region, as well as the broader Pacific region. With these remarks, I wish you well in your deliberations and look forward to the outcomes of the symposium. Thank you, Tomas. Thank you, Tru, Oleti, and Vinaka Vakalevu.